World Championship Match class. So I guess at some point they'll have to have a different class because there's a finite number of World Championship matches, right? So I looked at the list, and strangely my KISS was on the list, but it was the wrong list. It was the Hall & Oates list. But then I found the chess list. And I decided to do Tal Botvinnik 1960, the first match. And I have a few websites we can peruse before we look at some of the games. Now, as most of you know, Botvinnik never won a match where he was the world champion. Never. So when he was the world champion, he lost or drew. And then when he lost, he would get the rematch. So the other guy was the world champion, then he'd win. And this went on for about 7 matches. And then he played Petrosyan, and that was the end of that. Then he just lost. And then he retired. Then he said how great he was. Okay, so anyway, his first match with Tal won. Second match, Botvinnik won. Of course, we'll look at the Tal match, the Tal won. But the funny thing about it is, I've read a lot of chess stuff. I mean, not now, years ago. And there's lots of excuses. If you want to be a good chess player, you have a good excuse. Otherwise, So the excuse given for Tal, why Tal got crushed in the rematch, was that he was sick, because he was always sick. So he was always sick, it's true. He would often go to the hospital during tournaments. Often. He was born sick, sort of like, I'm messing the joke up here. Who was born sick?
No idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, you do. Hosier. Yeah, there you go. Come on, man. Take me to church. All right, so anyway, Tal was born sick, and he was the claw. I hope it's the right hand. His fingers were together, so he had like 3 fingers on one hand. And he always smoked, awake, asleep, or dead. He smoked.
He's still smoking?
Yes. Okay, so he died young, and there are pictures of Tal on the internet where it looks like he's about 107 and he's like 50. Yeah, he didn't look good. Now, when Tal wasn't sick, although he always was, man, he played good. Now, Botvinnik, his excuse was that he didn't play well the first match. Then the second match, Botvinnik played like Botvinnik, and then he just tore through Tal. I don't know. They're probably about the same strength. They both won all their games all the time, so they were They were always top 3 or 4 in the world when they were good. Now, one thing Tal did that Botvinnik didn't do. Tal became world champion in 1960. 1979, I visited Montreal with my family to watch Montreal 79. Seemed like a good idea. And Tal tied for first with Karpov with 10 out of 14. And Tal was the highest rated player in the world then, I think. And he was not as young as he was in 1960. So Tal was pretty good. And my last time that, actually I saw Tal after that, but the last victory of Tal in 1988, I was at the World Chess Festival in St. John, New Brunswick, like most of you have been. And it was cold. It was February and it was cold. How was it cold? Like I'm sort of cold now, and that was 1988, and I still can feel it. Anyway, they had a World Blitz Championship, and everybody played. Karpov played, Kasparov played, those were the weak players. Okay, and it was a knockout. The final match was Tal Vaganyan, and Tal won every game in the finals. And Karpov and Kasparov got knocked out. Karpov played Shirazi in the first round. That was hilarious. That was a great pairing. Kasparov got knocked out by Kirill Georgiev.
Was Walter Brown playing? Wasn't he great?
Walter Brown was there. Well, everybody says they're great until they play people who are better than them. Americans who like to say they're great, Walter Brown, Yasser Serouan, Max Delugi, they're good blitz players. But greats like Fischer, that's great. Tal, Anand when Anand was good, not now. Obviously not now. Yeah, okay, he's great. Anyway, Serouan played a match with Karpov here a couple of years ago, and in the blitz portion, how did Serouan do? I forgot. He also forgot. And Karpov was like 300 years old, and he took 300 pieces. Yeah. No, Karpov was a good blitz player. Kasparov was a good blitz player. Fischer was, yeah.
Every game was a draw before that.
Right. Then they played blitz, and yeah. Okay. So anyway, if you read the website here, chessgames.com, they have an article, I didn't know they had articles, on this match, and they said Tal was winning the candidates, and he was winning the interzonals, and he was winning the Soviet championship, and Botvinnik was world champion, so it seemed like a good match, and Tal just crushed him. And there's if you can see the bottom there, 12 and a half, 8 and a half. Tal was always in the lead. He was up 3-0, lost 2 in a row, and then he won 3 more.
Nice.
So 6 wins to 2 in 21 games. Seems like that would be the better player until they played again. Then he wasn't the better player. Okay, and I guess if I had to like pick which excuse I like better, I mean, Tal being in the hospital every day, I would guess if he wasn't in the hospital, he was just better. But now some people think he was an unsound player. Those people are probably right. But people couldn't prove it. So, okay, so that was a nice article. Now Tal wrote a book on this match, Tal Botvinnik by Tal. See? And it got really good reviews, 5 stars, 5. Those are the bad reviews. You should see the good reviews, yeah. And you can buy it on Amazon, see? You can put it on your Kindle, okay? And yeah. Anyway, it was a great match and secured Tal's place in history as one of the greatest players ever. And back in the 60s, the Soviet Union had some good Olympic teams, all world champions on every board. And those were the weak players. Yeah, they didn't want to let Botvinnik on the team. They're like, you're no good. And he's like, I'm the world champion. And they're like, all right. That's a good argument. Yeah, I mean, they had Petrosian and Tal and Kerez and Smyslov and Spassky. Those are some good players. I mean, so, and then Geller was beating Fischer every game. So Geller was pretty good too. So yeah, so those teams somehow won the Olympiad. I don't get it. Anyway, okay, so let's get to the board here. No, that didn't do it. All right, there we go. Now, the first game I want to look at, it has no chess value, but it's very funny. That's more important. Okay, and this is the game I remember as a kid. When I was a kid, I was reading all these books, you know, San Antonio 72, and then all the Tal books, all his world championship matches, and New York 1924. I'm sure you know that book really well. Okay, and this game stuck out at me because Tal was thinking, if I play this move, they're going to say what a terrible player I am. He was thinking that while he was playing the game, but he played it anyway. Okay, and it was a Caro-Kann, which every game is a Caro-Kann, I guess. And Tal played the 2 knights. Okay, there's the 2 knights. Okay, bishop to g4, which is the main move now. Now Botvinnik, he played the opening pretty well. I'll give him that. End game, middle game, play terrible. No. Okay, and after h3, you can either play bishop h5 or bishop takes f3. Bishop h5 is a very long, complicated tactical line. Probably not a good idea against Tal. So he took on f3. And you guys are confused why I'm pausing. And what did he play?
Queen takes, bishop.
Would I ask you if that's what he played?
Pawn takes, bishop.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, g takes f3.
Why did he ruin his pawn structure?
Oh, yeah, well, didn't he know how to play chess? And he won this match too. So he's the world champion. Well, I mean, I think if Liam was annotating the game, he would say, just kidding.
And then queen takes f3,
Yeah, GF, just kidding, queen f3. Nobody plays GF3 before or after this game, but he wanted to get Botvinnik out of his prep and like throw him off. Sometimes, like for example, I've played Alyssa Melakina twice, and I still have 0. First game I was +4, that wasn't enough. After the game, she told me how bad I played. And then I was like, but I was winning. Anyway, second game, she made a bad move on move 3 or 4 and with white. And I was like, I'm going to show her. And then every move I made was terrible, so I lost. Maybe that's what Tal was thinking. He was thinking of my game with Melakina. That hadn't happened yet. You know, Tal was thinking, I'll play GF3, and Botvinnik doesn't know that move. And I mean, it's just terrible. I can't. But I mean, it's funny that he played it and knew how terrible. He knows it's terrible. He knows what's up. So it's sort of funny that he played it. Okay, so yeah, usually you don't bluff in chess because it's sort of a perfect information game. You can see the board, but sometimes you do. Okay, so e6 solid, d4. And okay, double pawns in the center. I mean, e4 is protected. So if the queen had taken, black would be taking on e4 now, getting rid of the e4 pawn, and white's ready to replace it. Sort of like if you were dyslexic and were playing a Nimzo Indian, you know, or you were one of the typical players of the chess club and couldn't tell the difference. You know, sometimes you have doubled C pawns and you're defending your center, and you have doubled F pawns. Okay, and it's sort of similar, I guess, to the Bronstein-Larsen variation of the Caro-Kann, where you play GF. What? What?
No.
All right.
The same the pawn would be on c4.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know. It looks like it's a chess position. I don't know. Yeah. Sort of boring. Yeah, not really. I mean, it's more of a Botvinnik position than a tall position. Seems like black has a better pawn structure. White has two bishops. Yeah. Always play king b1. Yeah. This isn't like my earlier lecture. They both castled queenside. Yeah, so I mean, white had nothing this game, and it was lucky to draw, I guess. And then both sides had perpetual check, so that's good. Okay, and they agreed to a draw because perpetual check. Although I think, you know, black was better that game for most of the game, and white probably got lucky to draw. But that game I remember as a kid, and I was like, GF3, and I remember like Tal wrote some witty stuff about it. Like, yeah, I know this is bad, but it's not as bad as you think. And still nobody plays it. So, and it sort of reminds me of, you know, the Fischer-Bisgeier game, which I'm sure you're all aware of, where he plays knight h3 instead of knight f3 and the two knights. And then, you know, he's like, yeah, it's okay. Steinitz said it was good. So sometimes you just get your opponent off in the opening. It's sort of funny to do when you're ahead in the match and you're playing for the World Championship to play sort of crazy like that, but okay. Now, when I look at the games for the World Championship, and it's Tal Botvinnik, I want to see a King's Indian where Tal was black. And since I know my ECO codes, this looks like one. Okay, Tal had the black pieces. This better be a King's Indian. Come on, play d4. Okay, there you go, good. Now, against the King's Indian, well, even players today play it, but Botvinnik liked to play g3, bishop g2, which was played this game. And a lot of players nowadays, when they're playing the King's Indian and they're faced with this system, instead of playing d6, they'll play c6 and d5 and try to equalize in some kind of neo-Grinfeld. But okay, Tal's not doing that. Tal's playing the King's Indian. One of the reasons Tal was so beloved by everybody, especially Julian, is he played to win with both colors and he played for interesting positions. He never really played the safe move. So he thought if he understood the position and could outcalculate his opponent, then that's what he should do. And a lot of people, especially nowadays, I think less in the 60s and 70s, are very results and rating oriented, which is not good. Okay, so what happens is you got the crazy parents, which is all the parents, and they have their kid play chess and they want their kid to be higher rated than the other kids. And if they're not, then they're very upset. Why is my kid 1300 and that kid's 1320? So we gotta get them high rated. Okay, so they do anything to get their rating up. And if you can draw a higher rated player and beat lower rated players and get chess lessons and play higher rated players, your rating will go up and then the parent is proud. And then when you're older and your parent doesn't necessarily tell you what to do anymore, then you have to get IM and GM norms. I have to be an IM now. I can't wait a year. I got to play in 37 round robins and get 3 norms. Then I have to be a GM. And so people are very result oriented now. If they're not an IM by the age of 12 and a GM by the age of 13, you're finished. Okay? Now, in these days, they didn't really do that. There weren't a lot of GMs. If you were a GM, you were like top 10 in the world. So a lot of players wanted to actually like play well and win, like Fischer and Tal. So they played well and they won. And they weren't thinking, if I get +3, I'll win the tournament. Man, Fischer and Tall didn't think that. They were like, if I get plus 12 in this 13-round event, well, that's a good score. Okay, so they were playing to win every game, sort of like Americans do in these Swisses, like the Millionaire Open right now. And you got to win a lot of games. So the best American players like Nakamura and So, man, they win a lot of games because you got to win a lot of games. So it's nice that in some round robins, like the Singfield Cup, you know, the players are actually playing for a win and not hoping to get +1. Now, a funny aside, they were explaining after the event that Carlsen had a terrible tournament and that Nakamura finished great and tied for second, but they got the same score. Anyway, but yeah, so somehow it was a great event for one and terrible for the other. They're 1 and 2 in the world. I don't get it. Okay, so Tall's like, I'm playing the best moves, I'm playing to win, I'm playing interesting chess, and more important than playing the best moves, because anybody can do that, is I'm trying to make my opponent play badly. So if I get positions they don't understand, they'll play badly and I'll play well. Okay, that's a good mix. Nowadays, a lot of the top players, I won't mention any names like Anish Giri, they'll play 20 or 30 moves of theory and then agree to a draw. Okay, and then they get 1 win and 8 draws and they gain 5 rating points. Okay, I can't imagine Tall, you know, in his 20s, for example, having a tournament with 80 or 90% draws. I can't imagine Anish Giri not having 80 or 90% draws. Like, imagine Anish Giri played in the Singfield Cup and had 1 draw.
You mean he lost all his other games?
No, he's a good player. I'm just saying he could have like +1, but he can't do that. He doesn't do that. He plays 100 moves of theory and they agree to a draw. Okay, so that's why it's a little bit more fun to look at games that were played a long time ago when they didn't play 30 moves of theory. And it's also good to look at games where the players aren't quite as good, although not Wednesday night's bad, but there's some happy medium somewhere. Okay, because I cry a lot on Wednesday nights. That's my crying night. There was a game that was so bad I didn't believe it. I just said this didn't happen. People that you would believe it happened, and I still didn't believe it.
Really?
Yeah. Like whoever, the worst of the worst. Worse than that.
Worse than Greg?
Yeah. And like, these moves didn't happen. I know they didn't. That's how bad they were.
I know.
Yeah. Anyway, we're on film here. Okay. Anyway, so what you'd like is some happy medium where the players are both trying to win and they don't play 35 moves of prep and agree to a draw. And that's why matches that were played in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, when Fischer was playing, when Kasparov was playing, when Morphy was playing, these games are really interesting. And the games are interesting now for the most part, but sometimes they're not. Okay, and again, I don't want to be, you know, talking about a tournament where 80% of the games were draws. It doesn't mean the players are playing better now, they are, but a lot of it has to do with the players' attitudes. Okay, and luckily Tall had the right attitude. Okay, knight BD7. I mean, even nowadays, if there's a match with the top 5 players in the world, and you just pick 2 of them, and it's a world championship match, they're all going to be happy when they draw with black. Like if Carlsen's black against the non, then it's a draw. He's like, great, now I get white. And I'm okay, I mean, and that's not what happened, you know, 60, 70, 80, 90 years ago. We played for a win. Fischer wasn't playing for a draw with black against Bansky. Okay? But nowadays it would be like unheard of if they weren't happy with the draw. They'd be like, wow, I drew with black in 10 moves. All right, now I get white. So okay, things are different. All right. Okay, so castles, e5, e4, and this is still theory today. A lot of people today are playing knight to c6, and they're not playing e5, and they're playing some other crazy variations, panel variation. What's that?
A6.
Yeah, a6. Yeah, okay. But this is a long time ago when they were playing e5. They just played e5. Okay. Yeah. Nowadays, a lot of people think this is too passive for black, but generally what happens is some kind of spring. Like nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, Like the movie I always make fun of?
Yeah.
What is the movie? Yeah, exactly. Pay attention in class next time. And then all of a sudden, things happen. And you're like, wait, nothing happened for 20 moves. Why do I have to calculate now? So black's a bit passive because of his pieces over here. Yeah, but they'll get out later. Okay. So d5, the d pawn was under some pressure. Takes, knight c5. Knight e1, typical Botvinnik. Okay, so Botvinnik's going to maneuver his knight around, and well, he defends the e4 pawn. Okay. You, incorrect.
Okay, what's the difference between anyone and D2?
One's on e1 and one's on d2.
Right. Why is the knight better on E1 than D2?
Well, I don't think it's going to stay on either square. I think when you played knight d2, you were going to keep it there. Now were you?
I was going to go on C4.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to do. Well, knight e1 defends d3 more, and probably on c4, and queen a6, your knight has to do something. I don't think there's anything wrong with knight d2, unless knight d3 is good, but I'm too old for that. Maybe I'm not too old. Maybe just knight d3 is good. Okay, so knight e1, no more knight d3, knight d3. Yeah, Botvinnik's happy. Now, for the lower rated players, which is all of you and all of you at home, you guys don't like this as much as the high rated players do. High rated players love having a pawn on d5. Then they have what's called space, and their opponent can't do anything. So Botvinnik's pretty happy. And the knight on c5 was a pretty good knight, and now it's not there. The knight on f6, where's the knight on f6 going? Julian? Yeah, I don't know either. The bishop on g7, where's that going? I don't know. So, yeah. So white has a lot of space, and white's going to slowly do this Magnus Carlsen style, but it's Botvinnik style. Okay? And black doesn't really have compensation for the space. Black's going to play for tricks, but Tal was good at playing for tricks. So there's going to be a lot of tricks. Okay, so rook c8, taking the c file. Now, in a lot of King's Indians, white plays on the queen side, black plays for mate, as in, for example, Wesley So, Hikaru Nakamura from last month. And then when black wins, it's really cool. And when white wins, white gets like 3 queens. This is the opposite. Black's got nothing on the king's side, but black has a queen on b6. Black has an open c file. Black's bishop on d7 is controlling the queen side. So black's going to play on the queen side. Okay. Rook b1. Question.
Yes. What's wrong with just playing knight e8 and f5 instead of doing this rook c8 stuff? Why don't we have that stuff?
You can play knight e8 and f5, but I don't see how you're going to attack me. You know, sometimes you play knight h5 and queen g5 and h5, h4. You're not doing any of that. I think a lot of times in the g3 King's Indian, that's just not happening. You're not getting, there's no checkmating attack. And since the queen's on b6, there's no reason why white can't play on the king's side also. King h2, f4, or just take the pawn on f5 and then blockade. And if black did play knight e8 and f5, I'm not thrilled with his knight on e8, so I would have to probably go back to b6. Yeah? Or f6, I mean? Yeah, that's taking a long time. I'll play bishop e3 and you'll be like, no. Okay. And that's another plan, and you would think that would be the kind of plan that Tal would use. In these kinds of games, in the g3 King's Indian, Tal did something I like quite a bit. He didn't do nothing. Okay, that's always my recommendation to my students. And then eventually he did something when you were lulled to sleep. So obviously anybody can move their knight and play f5, but he'd move around and around and around, then he would do something active. And you'd be like, what? You didn't do anything active for 20 moves, what are you doing? Okay, so I like that style of playing also, waiting until Botvinnik gets in time trouble. Okay, rook b1, very safe move. He wants to play bishop e3, but after queen takes b2, the knight on c3 is hanging. So rook b1 first. See, now you're happy. You get to play knight h5 and f5. All right. Bishop e3, queen goes to b4. That's a tall move. I would go to d8 because I'd be afraid. Queen goes to e2. And the problem is if black plays f5, which he probably played, then when I take it, it's hard to take back. Your knight's hanging, g4 forks you. So queen e2 sort of against that, hits the knight. Okay, rook c4, that's a tall move. Rook c1, rook c8. So yeah, black is realizing the center is closed. And a lot of times when I have black and queen pawn openings, I'll also close the center. And then my opponent's like, why is the center closed? I don't play these positions. Then you maneuver on both sides of the board and try to gain an advantage. And white has an advantage in space in the center, but Tall's done a good job of taking the c file. And if he doesn't lose his queen, he's sitting pretty. Okay, to super paraphrase Chief Wiggum. Wow, that was a paraphrase. Okay, so king h2, which does nothing, so I like it. f5, so you like it. E takes f5, so I like it. Which rule does that follow, Julian?
You always play.
E takes f5. It's a very specific rule. Yeah.
Also, always play king b1.
Well, I always play king b1's not happening here. All right, now g takes f5 is risky because of queen takes knight. So he didn't do that. Okay, bishop takes, and the rook goes to a1. And eventually white might play g4 and win a piece. I hate when that happens. So knight f4, before he can win a piece, you sack a piece. Okay, and you can argue that Tal could calculate a million moves ahead and he figured everything out. But I think a lot of his calculation was based on justification based on the position. For example, black has a very active position. His rooks are better than white's rooks. His queen's better than white's queen. Bishop on f5 is pretty good. So it makes sense to continue to go forward, and it's likely the sacrifice will work. And if white doesn't accept the sacrifice, the knight's going to d3, it's taking the bishop on g2. Okay, so we have to take. Yeah, now it's hard to play white. I guess if bishop d2, b2 is hanging, but I mean, that's what I would do. Hey, okay, cool. I play like the guy who lost. All right, and queen b2. Yeah, so that was right on all accounts. Normally when you play queen b2 in any position in chess, when you're black, the guy plays rook b1, but there's a bishop on f5. So now it's hard to play rook b1 because it's hanging. On the other hand, this knight's attacked so many times I can't count that high. Yeah, so that's a lot of attacking going on. Yeah, so somehow black got very active on both sides of the board, and he's pushing Botvinnik around. It wasn't easy to push around. No wonder they wouldn't put him on the Olympic team. Terrible. No, he did well. You know who did even better than Botvinnik in the Olympiad? In those Olympiads? Was Petrosian. Man, that guy. He was getting like when he played in regular tournaments, he'd have like 15 draws. But then the Olympiad, then he would beat everybody. Man. He would always get gold medal. Okay, so rook b1 anyway, because I don't know what else to do. Your knight's hanging, your bishop's pinned. Okay, f3, breaking my rule. f3, that's called.
Moving the defender.
No. Yeah, but no. Yeah, not deflection, but decoy. And deflection, and move the defender, and a fork. It's everything. Well, the thing is, the queen is defending the bishop. So if the queen takes on f3, it's not defending the bishop. And I want to open this diagonal to white's king and open this rank for the rook. Yeah, it's everything. Yeah. Rook takes queen. Well, obviously queen takes is just black's winning. Bishop takes. What's his angle? I mean, it looks terrible for white, but just terrible. And then play queen c2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just terrible. I mean, it's just terrible. I mean, every piece is hanging. Okay, so he played rook takes queen, pawn takes queen, black's down a piece, but that knight on c3 doesn't look too good. Pawn on e2 looks pretty good. Okay, rook b3 defending his knight. Rook d4, attacking the bishop that's defending the knight. Bishop defends everything. Bishop e5 check. Bishop f4. Man, it's tough for white. White's up a piece, but his pieces aren't too good. Knight takes e2. That gets rid of the pawn. Knight takes, and what if he takes, oh, he's just down material. Yeah. Always play bishop f1. Yeah. And black got his piece back, and he's still very active. And obviously Botvinnik is in terrible time trouble. f4 looks terrible. Yeah, the two bishops are too strong. That's a pretty nice trick by Botvinnik. Bishop takes knight, rook e3 check. Drawing chances. I don't know if you draw. You might. Probably not. d5, bishop h4 check. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Man, time to resign. Oh, he resigned. I thought he resigned earlier, but yeah. All right. So that was a typical tall type of win. King's Indian, complications, and when Botvinnik gets in time trouble, he falls apart. And again, for certain players like Nakamura, and who, Radjabov? Does he play the King's Indian? He's the only one, right? Yeah, the King's Indian, the computer says it's bad, then you win.
They should play against some chess.
Well, sometimes you lose. But, I mean, sometimes you lose when you play chess, but that's okay. And when you get games like this, where black's very active, black's sacrificing material, and white's basically falling apart on both sides of the board, you get to see what a great player Tal was. I mean, the rematch wasn't so good, but these things happen. Okay, lots of draws, of course. Here's a very long win, which is reminding me of the queen and pawn ending they had, but I don't know if this is the game. When I was a kid, there were certain games I remembered. Okay, so here's another Tal win. This time he's white. And again, Tal was known for wild, crazy attacking chess, but even though players are known for certain ways of playing, that doesn't mean they always play that way. Again, that's something lower rated players have an issue with, is they're usually very dogmatic. And the better you get at chess, the less dogmatic you are. Okay, like Julian, makes a move and resigns. Too dogmatic. Okay, you can't move or resign. You can't do either one. When you're a good player, you're like Grishik, you don't do nothing. You sit there and the game ends somehow. So, even though certain players, when you think of them, let's say Karpov, you think boring technical skill, but I'll show you checkmating attacks he had, like against Korchnoi and the Dragon in 73. You agree? 74?
I don't.
It was one of them. We don't know what I'm talking about. I've lectured on that game. And also, like Petrosian, who was known as a boring player, had brilliant queen sacrifices. So Tal, who's usually playing e4 and playing sharp Sicilians if possible, is playing knight f3, g3, which is what people play now. But, I mean, you can play any way you want. Okay, and you can do whatever you want. Yeah, b3, knight e4, and then I'll play this way now. Okay, we're transposing into some funny Grunfeld. I think I've actually had white in this position. I mean black. I think Von Whaley and I agreed to a draw. We tied for first. Yeah, it was a weekend tournament in the Netherlands. Neither one of us was born yet. Okay, and I was black.
What?
Okay. So this looks more like a Botvinnik position than a Tal position. And in World Championship matches, usually the players are about the same strength. So sometimes a player has a certain style he prefers. So like in the last game in the King's Indian, Botvinnik got his space advantage. Tal got an attack on both wings and then sacked a piece and ended up out-calculating him in the early endgame. This seems like a real Botvinnik position. Like there's not going to be a lot of tactics. It'll be a slow positional game. And yet, Tal was the one who outlasted him. Yeah, these positions are very hard to play for black. I've had black in these positions a lot. You just sit around, don't do anything. which I like to do.
Never understood how you play white with black.
You don't do nothing. When you do something, that's wrong.
Yeah.
So look who did something. Right, he didn't play queen b8. Probably loses a pawn or something. So he took this, and you never want to do that unless you have some great tactical justification because you're giving away the center. Black's tactical justification would usually be something like c5, but with bishop takes b7 coming, I don't believe it. So I don't believe any of this. I believe nothing. Yeah, I mean, this is just good for white. White has the center. 2 bishops. Botvinnik, Botvinnik, Botvinnik. How could you do that? Yay, bishop c1. Now we're playing chess.
Next move, bishop f1.
Well, no, bishop f4, bishop g5 is the next move. Wow, queen a8. When you guys get better at chess, you'll play moves like queen a8.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. You're better than me then. How would I know? Well, he was worried that bishop f4 would pin his queen, knight to his queen, but I'm still not playing queen a8. Okay, provoking a move you should never play. Never play f6. And I think this is especially true here because then I think the e6 pawn is a bit tender. Come on, play a Botvinnik, I dare you. Yeah, rook e8, that's right. Okay, queen d2. Yeah, this is just awful for black. Okay, so a lot of times people don't like to lose slowly where they have no play, so they lash out. So obviously, white has a better center, 2 pawns in the center. White has the 2 bishops. Black's queen is on a8. Black can't put a rook on d8. If I was a betting man, and you showed me this game, if I was a betting man, and you showed me this game, and you said this is tall Botvinnik, what colors were they? Now this is Botvinnik tall for sure. This is pure Botvinnik with white, knight f3, g3, slow, 2 bishops, better center, but it's tall Botvinnik. So it's amazing how sometimes the roles are reversed. Occasionally, Karpov would checkmate Kasparov, just usually not. Usually Kasparov would have the attack. Yeah. Okay, so f5, and again, that seems more like a tall move. But Botvinnik likes to play the Dutch. Very strange for a world champion. Okay, bishop h6, queen and bishop better than queen and knight. There we go, nice. Black's king's a little iffy. Okay, now we're going to go to work on the e-pawn. Now, I was making fun of the knights players, and rightfully so. You agree, Danny? Yeah. And he's like, but I was playing the leave me alone. And I just annotated the games today. Is that what I did? Yeah. And there was one game, I don't know, this was a game of one of my students. He played f5 and a similar pawn structure, and the guy rerouted his bishop to b3. Yeah, then that was it. And e6 was permanently weak, as I've highlighted here. Yeah, the other guy played good. Yeah. All right, so Tal's decided to attack the e-pawn. Rook f7. So what happens on queen takes? Do we play my favorite move?
Takes f5.
Yeah, now you're talking.
And bishop f5.
Yeah, because queen and bishop, queen and knight.
Wow. That's killing.
It seems like white's pieces are all working. This knight's working to defend that. Yeah. Okay, so rook ef7, defense. Queen d2, defending the d4 pawn. Always play bishop f1 to play bishop c4, of course. Always play he takes f5, and it's always a good player.
Bishop c4.
Yeah. Yeah, this isn't good for black. Yeah, the queen and bishop really crushed the queen and knight here, as they usually do. Yeah. Yeah, that knight's not, I mean, the knight's going to stay on c7 forever defending e6, and if the knight ever decides to become active, e6 isn't looking so good. Queen back to d2. That's like Karpov-Kamsky, 1992. Learn your openings. Yeah, and e6 in the long run is not good. Okay, you can't play knight takes queen because rook takes queen check. Ah, he moved towards the e6 pawn but didn't take it. Yeah, black's king isn't so good. And he defends the e6 pawn anyway. a7 is hanging. And a nice little tactical trick that Julian would have played in 1 second. Looks like king h8 loses and rook g7 loses.
Yeah.
What did he do? Because the game went a long time. Man, he defends good.
Really?
What would you play? Because I'm going to play queen d8 check no matter what you play.
Yeah.
All right, queen d8 check. Rook takes rook, I guess. Yes, I knew there was a queen and pawn ending in one of these matches, and this game was really long, so I thought it might be this one. So it was this game. Now, what famous game does this remind you of? Yeah, I know, I'm kidding. Fischer-Spassky, 1992. Didn't see that coming. Fischer was 2 pawns up and a queen and pawn ending, but he didn't win. And I was like, what's that guy, not play chess for 20 years? That game wasn't in the movie. Yeah. That was 2 pawn sacrifice. Yeah. All right, so.
It was a pawn sacrifice too.
Yeah, so white's up 2 pawns. He's having fun. Can't have more fun than being up 2 pawns. And here, there was a resignation.
I thought the judge stopped the fight.
Yeah. Well, 2 pawns up's winning, and checkmating is winning, everything's winning, yeah. So that was a very Botvinnik-like performance from Tal. But I mean, that's what you get, yeah. Now, unfortunately, occasionally, Bobby Fischer was right. Okay, it happens. If you say 1,000 things, 1 or 2 of them are right. So Fischer didn't like the fact that if you were ahead in a match and the match was limited, you'd draw and then you win the match. He didn't like that. He said this match should go at least a year, okay? Which almost happened, man. You're not old enough to remember, but Karpov-Kasparov, the first match, that's still going on. I'll let you know when it's over. I'm trying to figure out which is going to be first. That match will end, or the sandwich I ordered 5.5 years ago from Coffee Tartel is going to be ready. It's tough to say. Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah, much quicker. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, if you lived in St. Louis, you get that joke. Yeah. Anyway, so as the match ended, it went draw, draw, and the match was over because it was the first to get 12.5 points. And once Botvinnik was ahead by enough, he could draw. In fact, even though these games that he won near the end, he could have drawn them, and he would have won the match in 23 games. Okay.
The last game was that only
17, yeah. Well, I think at that point, he's up where Botvinnik has to win games 21, 22, 23, and 24. That's not going to happen. Well, against me it might, but not against the guy who's beating you. Yeah. So that's unfortunate, but that's the nature of a match that's limited. Okay. And it's, again, Tal's white, and look what he's doing. He's like, let's make the game boring. And this is actually very funny, because a lot of people are like, chess is dead, look at all the draws. Well, when the players want to play, like Tal Botvinnik, then they play. And then when Tal's like, hey, a draw wins me the world championship, then he can play like the guys do now. Oh, okay, draw. It's like, what are you going to do? So this is why Petrosian in particular was a very tough world championship opponent, because that guy could draw. So if he won a game, you were in trouble. On the other hand, if he's playing in a round robin with the 10 best players in the world, he's not going to win. And he did not win, because he'd have 2 wins and 9 draws. That doesn't win, although it does now, but it didn't then. And when Petrosian played World Championship Match, you had to beat him. And then somehow Fischer beat him every game. Wow, 4 games in a row. Yeah. So, okay, anyway, probably Botvinnik had sort of given up by this point, and Tal just played whatever the most boring, simple, trade everything, like the way they play now. Yeah, except this was to draw to win the world championship. Now, to Magnus Carlsen's credit, when he needed to draw to become the world champion for the first time, he played for a win, because he was better. And then he didn't win this better position. Yeah, okay. Black's never going to win here. He's going to lose or draw. So Botvinnik offered a draw, and Tal's like, all right, I'm the world champion. Okay. Yeah. But okay, I mean, Black has to play for a win, and he plays the most passive, boring, trading everything opening. See, now if Fischer was Black, or Kasparov, or Carlsen, or somebody who knows they have to win 3 or 4 in a row, it's not going to be a Queen's Indian where you trade everything.
Why would it fall accept the draw?
Well, maybe you're the world champion every day, but this made him the world champion. Well, that's one argument. I think Carlsen wouldn't take a draw here. He'd be like, wow, I have a good position. Yeah. Like, I have 0 losing chances, and I'm better. Yeah. And Tal's like, I'm the world champion. Time to go drinking. Yeah. And then he's like, I lost the world championship. Time to go drinking. Yeah, occasionally he was drinking. He smoked more, but it was close. Yeah. Close. Tough decision.
But is he still drinking?
Yeah. So anyway, this match was great because Tal, this reminds me of basically Kasparov-Karpov, their first match with the style clash, except, man, you weren't alive. Man, Karpov showed him. After 9 games, it was 4-0. And after 29 games, it was 5-0. And then that was it. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, in this match, Botvinnik didn't show his strategical mastery was better than Tal's tactics. Second match he did. And with Karpov-Kasparov, it was the opposite. Karpov showed his positional mastery was better than Kasparov's tactics. And then after the second match and on, it was either even or Kasparov got him by a point or 2.
Kasparov became better, right?
That's correct. And you would think, since Tal was like 5 years older, he would get better. Tal was the younger player, but Tal got crushed the second match, was destroyed. Like sort of the same as this match. And this clash of styles, I think, makes a good match where one guy's a better strategical player, like Karpov was to Kasparov, and Kasparov and Tal were better tacticians. And you get to see Tal play G takes F3, and you're like, what? And you get to see King's Indians. And when you have, unfortunately for you guys, when you have Carlsen and on, you don't see that. You see like, I'm slightly better, no I am. And then draw, okay, Carlsen's better, draw, okay, Carlsen's better. And then he wins 2-0 with 8 draws. Okay. But here, you see fewer draws, and some of the draws, for example, just because you have them up here, okay, 72 moves, 41, 76, and only at the very end, okay, the match is over. Yeah, I mean, they're playing a limited number of games. And Fischer didn't like that. Fischer's like, let's just play until somebody wins some games, not just draw, I'm the world champion. And unfortunately, the arguments made against Fischer's plans are correct. The way the players play now, if you did that, the match might never end. I mean, if you play first to win 10 games, I mean, the 85 match would still be going on. I mean, they have 5 games to 3 after 49 games. I mean, you can't be playing like 9 months. And he's like, yeah, why not? So, I don't think spectators want to see 9 months of 2 guys playing. I could be wrong.
I would.
I don't want to see a non-play Carlsen for 9 months.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't want to see that.
Somebody else.
I don't want to see that. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the World Championship matches now are way too short. 20, 30 games. Okay, not like 10 games, 12 games. Come on, that's not even chess at all.
So 30 games.
30 games is a lot, but there's some happy medium. I don't know what it is. Those guys get paid $1 million for a match. They can play for a month. $1 million a month is okay. It's a pay cut, but they'll take it. Yeah. But okay, anyway. So, well, for those of you who showed up late, which is some of you, Botvinnik never won a match as the world champion. He always lost or drew, and then he'd win the rematch. Until he played Petrosian and just kept losing. Yeah. And Botvinnik played a lot of world championship matches. He played, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 of them. And he played Bronstein, played Smyslov, played Petrosian, played Tal. And when you play so many world championship matches, that really gives you the advantage over the other guy who's just playing 1. And then when you beat him in the rematch, he's done. You have to beat him 2 matches. Hard to beat Botvinnik 2 matches. He was pretty good, right? So the system is very strange, and it has been for a long time. And it's a little strange now because the World Cup which determines 2 people to go to the candidates match is like blitz chess. It's like 2 games of slow chess, then it's like Ben Simon's running it. It's a 2-game match, and then you play like 15 minutes, you know, come on. So,
Except the final.
no, the final match is usually some pretty good players. Carlsen and Anand, those guys are pretty good, yeah. But
In the final, you've already determined who's
yeah.
going to.
No, yeah, in the final, when you have Caro-Kann and Svidler, they're not playing for who goes to the candidates, exactly. Very suspicious.